Good morning. You are listening to Mrs. Solomon. I will be presenting transitive and intransitive verbs today. I'm a subject advisor at the Mateo district. So I hope all of you are going to find this interesting. Right, transitive and intransitive verbs. Now let's start at the beginning. What is a verb? Now obviously most of us have heard about a verb and we've been taught about what a verb is since we started in grade 1. But let us refresh our memories. A verb is a word that expresses action. It's a doing word. For instance, jumps, sings, plays. It can also be without the S. When it's a plural subject, we would say they jump, they sing, and they play. Right. A verb also tells us what a person is or was, do or does or did, or has or had. Examples. Let's look at the first one. Wayne Johnson is a famous character. We can also say the same sentence in the past tense when we use the word was. Wayne Johnson was a famous actor. The next one, Jakes has a house in Johannesburg. We can also say Jakes had a house in Johannesburg. Then Liratu does her homework late. We can also say Liratu and her friends do their homework late. Right, now that is when we talk about a verb, more or less, that is what a verb is all about. Now next, what is a transitive verb? I don't know if any of you have heard of a transitive verb, but when I asked some of my kids what a transitive verb is, they couldn't remind that they've ever been taught about a transitive verb. So I've given you a sentence here as an example. The teacher counts the books after a test. Now we've been taught that when we have to find a verb, we say who does what. What is the action? So the action here is counts. Now the subject, we ask the question who counts? So it's the teacher. The teacher counts what? The books. And here, instead of just saying the book is books as an object, we say the books are they are a direct object. And then you will see in the green, after a test, because that will also answer your question that says the teacher counts what? The books, object. The teacher can also count a test. That will be your indirect object because it doesn't follow your verb directly. Right. Now we want to know why is this verb called a transitive verb. Right. Let's see if we can explain that. What makes a verb a transitive verb? A transitive verb, number one, it requires an object to complete its meaning and an indication of an action which passes over from the doer, the subject, to an object. Now let's go back to the previous one. We said a transitive verb requires an action from a doer that carries over onto an object. Let's go back and see if you understand that. A transitive verb requires an object to complete its meaning and it indicates an action which passes over from the doer to the object. Let's go back. Right? So the subject is the teacher. The object is the books, which becomes a direct object. And then the verb counts becomes a transitive verb because it has a subject that has an action that carries over onto an object. Now this, a test in the green, becomes an indirect object because we could actually put a full stop here after the teacher counts the books. So the rest after a test is just an add-on. So this sentence makes sense if we left out any of the components like the teacher, counts, the books, it would not really make sense because we would always ask the teacher counts what? So the answer would be the books. So your transitive verb needs an action from a subject that carries over to an object to complete a sentence. Right. So I hope that is clear and you understand that. Now, I just added this slide to make sure that you understand, right? The teacher counts the books after a test. Who is the doer or the subject? Does what is the transitive verb. Counts what is the direct object. And then the part in the green is your indirect object because it is just an add-on. Therefore, we can say who, the teacher, is the subject and the doer. Did what is your verb. The teacher counts. It's an action. And in brackets, I've put there that it's a transitive verb because it carries over onto a direct object. And how do we get to the object? We have to ask the question, what? What does the teacher do? What does the teacher count? The teacher counts the books. That's your direct object. Remember, as soon as we have a direct object, our verb becomes transitive. Let me just say that once more. As soon as we have a direct object, our verb becomes transitive. Now let's go to the next slide. Examples of the transitive verbs would be, he bought the necklace. So, he would be the subject. Did what? He bought. That is your verb. Now, what did he buy? He bought the necklace. For her is an add-on. So, he is the subject. Bought becomes your transitive verb because it carries over onto a direct object. The for her, the other object, her, becomes an add-on. Therefore, it is your indirect object. The next sentence, the principal gifted the certificate to him. Who? The principal. It's your subject. What did the principal do? He gifted. That's your verb. He gifted what? The certificate. The sentence could actually be the principal gifted the certificate to him. Right. So who, the principal, becomes your subject. Gifted becomes your transitive verb because it carries over onto a direct object. The next one, Tembi found my shoes. Who? Tembi. Tembi is the doer or the subject. What did Tembi do? She found becomes your verb. What did she find? My shoes is your object. So subject, transitive verb because it carries the subject, carries the action over onto a object. This is your direct object. My friends played with me. Who? My friends. That becomes the subject. What did they do? They played is your object. What or with whom did they play? They played with me is the object. So subject, transitive verb because it carries over onto a direct object, me. They do their homework every day. Who? They. That's your subject. What do they do? The action. They do. What? Their homework. So they is your subject. Do becomes your verb. It becomes a transitive verb because it carries over onto a direct object. The rest of the words becomes your add-ons. Remember, the words in bold, these ones, bought, gifted, found, played, do, That is your transitive verbs. The underlined words is your direct object or your indirect object. So the words in bold becomes your transitive verbs: bought, gifted, found, played, do. Transitive verbs because they carry over onto a direct object. The underlined words is your direct object or your indirect object. Like for instance, the necklace is a direct object, her is an indirect object. The certificate is a direct object, to him becomes an indirect object. My shoes, direct object. Me, direct object. Homework, direct object. The other words every day, those becomes add-ons. Now we go to the opposite of a transitive verb is an intransitive verb. And there I try to explain it to you by saying an intransitive verb does not require an object. I think that is the main difference between a transitive and an intransitive verb. An intransitive verb does not require an object to complete its meaning, but it requires a complement. And a complement is a group of words to complete the sentence, which refers to the subject of the sentence. In other words, the transitive verb must be there. There must be a group of words that refer to the subject, the doer. And we have to use linking verbs to make meaning. Let's go through that again. An intransitive verb does not require an object to complete its meaning, but it requires a complement, which means a group of words to complete the sentence, which refers to the subject. So the group of words must refer to the subject, the person, the doer, right? And we have to use linking verbs to make meaning, right? Let's have an explanation of an intransitive verb. We say here, the dogs bark. The dogs, who, that's your subject or your doer. Bark, that's your verb, right? Does what? Verb, that's the action. Non-stop, the dogs bark non-stop. That's a complement, a group of words that refers to the subject. Right, so this verb here, bark, becomes intransitive. I hope you can see that the verb does not carry on to an object. There's no object here. There is a group of words that describe what the dogs are doing. Right, let's carry on. There's a note for you. It says the sentence does not need an object to make meaning. When we go back to the previous word, the sentence, the dogs bark. If we stop there, it makes sense. The dogs bark. Non-stop explains or gives more meaning to the subject. Right. Then we carry on next. So, the sentence does not need an object. We go to the next one. The girls sing in harmony. Okay. The girls is the subject. Why? Because we asked the question who. The answer will be the girls. That will be the subject or the doer. The action, the verb will be sing. In harmony is a complement of words that describe how the girls are singing. Right, so it is a group of words that complement the girls on their singing. Right, so sing becomes an intransitive verb because we do not have a direct object. In harmony is not an object. It describes how they are singing. Right. Next, just a note. Remember, an easy way to figure out if the sentence is transitive or intransitive is to find the subject and the verb and to ask what or whom. You find the subject, the doer, you find the verb, and we'll say the subject does what or whom. So if we can answer the what and the whom, that becomes transitive, or if there is no object, it becomes intransitive. Right. Next one. Remember at the beginning we said, let's go back to the slide where we explained about using linking verbs to make meaning. So we said, which refers to the subject of the sentence by using linking verbs to make meaning. Now we want to know what is a linking verb. So we have a sentence here that says, Emma looks beautiful. Who? Emma, that's your subject. Looks is a verb. Beautiful is a complement, right? So, Emma looks beautiful. Do we have an object? No. So this verb becomes an intransitive sentence because we do not have an object. But now let's look. We said the subject does not, the verb does not point to an action, right? So looks doesn't mean she's jumping or she's singing, or it's not an action that's being carried out here. So this, it comes a linking verb. If we say the cake tastes delicious, the cake is a subject, linking verb tastes, and then the complement is delicious. It does not join the subject, and the subject complements in a sentence. Right, so the linking verbs is only in your intransitive sentences. Next, more examples of linking verbs. The sky appeared cloudy. Who or what? The sky appeared, it's your verb. What did it appear? What did it do? This is not really something that can be done. So it's a linking verb, right? And then cloudy is a complement of the subject, right? Pumpkin plants grow fast. So who or what? Pumpkin. That's your subject or your doer. Your verb, the verb should be grow. So fast is a complement of how the pumpkins grow. So this should both have been in bold. Pumpkin plants, right? This is your subject. So meaning I made a little mistake there by not bolding pumpkin as well. So they grow fast. So fast, this is the verb. Fast is an complement of how the pumpkin plants grow. His words sounded incoherent. Sounded is your linking verb. His words becomes your subject. So how did his words sound? Incoherent. Incoherent is not an object. This is not an object. So the sentence is intransitive because it doesn't have an object, and incoherent describes the subject, his words. Right. The words in bold are linking words. So appeared, plants, sounded. Those are your linking words or linking verbs. The underlined words are complement to the subject. The sky, cloudy, it's complementing the subject. Fast, complementing The pumpkin plants on how they grow. Incoherent, it's complimenting his words on how they sound. Right, so I hope this is clear to you and that you understand. So you only get your linking verbs when you have intransitive sentences. Intransitive sentences do not have objects. They have a group of words or a word that describes the subject on how it appeared. The first describes the subject, the pumpkin plants on how they grow. Incoherent complements his words on how it sounded. So the bold verbs are the linking verbs. Let's look next. Let's practice a bit. Bob and Ray play the piano every morning. Can you spot the direct object? Let's see. Bob and Ray play the piano. So let's find the verb. Rob and Ray does what? They play. Who plays? Rob and Ray. So that becomes your subject. Right? That's the doer. Now, the subject, Rob and Ray, play what? So I hope you guessed it correctly. The piano. And then the piano becomes your direct object. So this is a transitive sentence. Oh. Right. I hope that most of you could guess this correctly. So let's go to the next one. I visit my grandparents every day. Let us find the verb, visit. Who visits? I. So here I becomes the subject. This is visit. Where's the direct object? The direct object would be my grandparents. So who, the subject, visits becomes your transitive verb because it carries over onto a direct object. Let's say that again. I, that's the subject. Visit is my transitive verb because it carries over onto a direct object, my grandparents. This sentence is also transitive. There I have given you an explanation of transitive and intransitive verbs, and I really do hope that you all could make sense of it. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you.